Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Land Use Subcommittee. For today, we're going to go ahead and record this in Spanish, and so we will go ahead and turn on interpretation here. And for our Spanish speakers in the room, what that'll mean is you'll just have to enter for the little globe down at the bottom of your screen. You'll just click into the English channel, and then you can also mute your original audio. Amelia, did I miss anything there?
No, you're good, Stephanie. I don't see anybody who speaks Spanish, so I don't think I need to repeat that in Spanish.
I agree. Thank you so much. And I'll go ahead and turn that on and pass it over to Ryan.
All right. Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, Ryan Hayashi, Deputy Air Pollution Control Officer. I'm happy to be here this morning to talk about the ongoing discussion that we've been having in regards to the city and the air district and land use, and what had been discussed was a letter of understanding. And at the last subcommittee meeting, the desire was expressed by the subcommittee members to look at instead of a letter of understanding, a memorandum of understanding. And so, we had a discussion with the city of Fresno and whether that, what possibility there is for that. And so at this time, we'd turn it over to the city to share what their findings are.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan, and thank you, everybody. I apologize, I was not at the last meeting, so I had to be briefed via Ryan and Jennifer on the particulars. But on the MOU, I think going back several months, if not longer, the city has, the ask was the city lay out our process and our plans of how we intend to communicate with the air board. And that's what we've done. And we don't think that an MOU is needed. And that's why we laid it out in a letter, because it's already done. The other question, the other part that I've clearly heard in a lot of the CSC meetings over the years is that, members of the community really want some type of voice in the land use process, particularly in the commenting piece of it. And I think, as we've said early on, the city is not willing to add an additional commentor. We know that the air board, is a legal commentor, and there are other processes for individuals and folks to make comments. So,
great.
And then one more thing. Finally, I'm sorry, Naomi.
It's just that a Spanish speaker joined, and just another everybody is joining, and I would like for them to understand. Sorry. No, I'll slow down and stop for a quick second while everyone gets on. Thank you. I appreciate that. No. I was about to wrap up and ask you a question, but. Just let me know when we're all caught up here.
And I do think Amelia and both Juan Luis are in the.
Sí, yo estoy en el de español. Gracias.
I think you can continue now, Greg.
Okay. Let me just quickly do a recap, and I see a thumbs up, so thank you to the interpreter. Let me just do a quick recap of what we were just talking about. So that really the city, originally was asked to lay out a process, which we've done. And we didn't think that an MOU was needed. And so we did it within the letter, the spirit of the letter, to just, again, reiterate, the process that we've come up with the air board. Although I wasn't at the last meeting, I did hear that the community wants an MOU. And so I wanted to ask the question because I've looked high and low, and I have not seen another MOU with any other organization, either locally or throughout the state on this issue. So that's, again, another reason why we wanted to go, we went the letter route. And then finally, I do know that the community wants to have a say in the land use commenting. but that's something that is not designated to the CSC in AB 617. The Air Board already has that, and there are other avenues that we've laid out that the community can comment. So with that, I will leave it at that and just ask, what else did I miss, if anything?
Yeah, I wanted to touch briefly, Greg, on one component, and it's definitely in the letter. I mean, it's I think what you're talking about in like the first of its kind nature, I definitely think of, you know, a letter of understanding such as this really is the first time that it's, you know, being explored and you know, making progress towards. I think that, you know, in reading the letter, it definitely is clear that what it does provide is enhanced outreach to community members. So it highlights the existing processes, which is the main thing, making sure that people are aware of potential projects, or you know, by the time that we're talking about them here, they would be real projects, but that it would be at a time where, you know, the comments could be provided that could be taken into consideration before you know, being taken to the city for approval. So I mean, you know, having those opportunities, I think that's really what the community steering committee has been asking for, and I think it's highlighted in the letter of understanding, while at the same time enhancing what like the existing processes. I think that's, you know, some of the things that we've heard from residents is that the existing processes sometimes aren't. I think there's the city makes effort to make these things. You can go online, you can find them, but I think what the steering committee members were making it so that it's more easily accessible for more people to know about these projects, to be able to participate in the commenting process and the review process. And I think that's where the letter of understanding really does a good job of outlining how that would happen. And that's where I say that this is really a first of its kind of this type of nature, to make that a focal point. And but what we've heard from the city is that the you know, having a memorandum of understanding would not be the route that the city would be willing to go down. It would be more in the form of a letter of understanding, which
Correct.
Greg has highlighted. We've instituted some of these things. I think the enhanced outreach is the one component of the letter that, you know, when we get this done, that would be the one that we would focus on and make sure we're moving forward on. So I think hopefully I covered that accurately, Greg.
Yes, yes. So I think we would be open to discussion at this point. Yep, you did.
I mean, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, well, thank you for that explanation. I think that I see the city of Fresno being a very, you know, a city that doesn't have any problem in innovating. So even if there's no a precedent of a city and an air district having a memorandum of understanding, I don't see why not having that precedent, that would be an obstacle. I think that, you know, we're just going back to what the commitment of the air district was when we were part of the approval of the SERP, which clearly specifies that, you know, it's a memorandum of understanding and it's spelled out, or other documents. But we believe that the MOU really carries more weight than just a letter. I can send love letters and then nothing happens. So I think that that's why the whole committee has been very adamant about that. And I see Genevieve is here too. So I know that she has done a lot of more research on which kind of memorandum of understandings have been put in place just on AB 617 communities, for example, and it's not exactly the same, but there was a very strong memorandum of understanding between the Bay Area Air Pollution Control District and one of the local partners that was serving as a co-lead of the entire process. I'm not saying it's the same, but it's just like an example that MOUs have happened in other AB617 communities, and that, you know, I frankly really believe that the leadership of the city of Fresno is very, again, you know, innovative, that are not shying away of really making bold decisions for the betterment of the community. So I think that, you know, I would like to put off forward that at least that idea is still explored. But Genevieve, do you want to say anything about some of the MOUs that have been established in other AB617 communities?
Yeah, only briefly. I know I've shared these, I think, with the district in hopes of them being shared with the larger committee. But there's been I mean, the DARE districts knows a lot about these, but there's been MOUs between CARB and the Air District, between companies and regulatory agencies, for instance, rail yards and operators of rail yards. And then there's a MOU in Los Angeles. And so they're all designed to create enforceable agreements around air quality and protecting public health.
Genevieve, I will say I've seen the Bay Area one with the Port of Oakland, but there was some monetary things that were tied into that, that it required, you know, more of a legal contract in that sense. I'm not sure about Royal Port in LA. It's probably similar, but I do know the Oakland one very, very well because my mom worked at the port. So, but that spun off other things such as no idling, etc., which were enforceable. You're correct.
Yeah, and we did the information that you shared with us, Genevieve, we definitely shared with the city, and we reached out with you know, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District to get a better understanding of what agreements or MOUs that they had with the Port of Stockton, Port of Oakland. And they shared one that they did, it was on a truck retrofit program. That was an MOU that they had. So, I mean, it's not that MOUs haven't been done. You know, when I think we're talking about land use and things of this nature, this is really innovative and kind of like first of its kind in looking to do one of these. And while, you know, I definitely hear what you're saying, I mean, about the, you know, putting in place, you know, the desire for an MOU. I think what Greg is saying is, you know, if we do a letter of understanding with, you know, these enhancements and if it gets the job done and like, you know, I think what Greg is saying, there wouldn't be a need for an MOU. Is that accurate, Greg? I mean,
Yeah,
really,
well, we just don't see there is a need. I mean, we have voluntarily said, hey, this is what we're going to do. We put almost all of this into place. I think there's some logistics on the flagging that you guys are still working at a staff level, but everything else is in place. And I think, you know, the process is working well. And I'm hoping from the community side, you are seeing a difference in the comment letters that are coming out of the Air Board on projects within the city. Similar to what I heard last night with on the 92 acres at Allen.
Thank you both. I think the one thing I'll say is that while we're appreciative of this voluntary action, MOUs could include an enforceability provision to ensure, even as if city leadership were to change or air district leadership were to change, that the commitments in the MOU are upheld over time. So I think it's a way for community residents to feel more comfortable that these are lasting changes, as opposed to a wink and a handshake that we don't know if it will last.
Understood. So let me ask this part about the what's in the letter right now. Does it cover everything does it make, I can't say it makes you feel good, but do you feel good about what's in the letter and what's covered at this point?
Well, let me maybe break down the different components of the letter that's been shared, the multiple versions, and the things that have been requested and asked for by the subcommittee. And so, there was the collaboration, ongoing collaboration between the district and the city on all projects within the AB 617 community. And definitely, Greg has mentioned it, and a lot of you have seen the types of letters that have been produced from that, and how it brings things that have been shared by the community steering committee for things that they would like to see as part of these projects. Those have been included as part of the comments that we've been making on projects. The other, I think, which is the bigger component, was to do more to make community members aware of projects and the commenting processes, how they can get involved, how they can, how they're made aware of the projects that are going on, and how they can participate and make comments. That to me was one of the main focus. How do you bring in community to participate using the existing established structures, but just bringing more awareness being the key factor. And it was outlined in the last shared letter, how we may go about doing that. So I think those were kind of the key things that we heard and shared with the city, and that they had incorporated into their letter.
And I think we have provided very specific feedback on even all the different iterations of the letter. So I think that I don't have those drafts and the feedback that we provided, in front of me, but I think definitely there has been a lot of more of what we had requested or suggested incorporated into the letter. But I think, again, we're stuck into this, situation of a paper versus a letter versus an MOU. And I have spoken a lot, so I will let Kevin chime in because his hand is raised.
Sure. So by the way, I think the letter is a big step forward, and I just want to make sure that I compliment everybody on this kind of collaboration, the spirit behind it, and the content of the letter certainly fits the spirit of the verbal agreements, and to some extent, meets, I think, the requirements that the CSC sort of put forward on what they would like to see in this relationship, or as a supporting document for this relationship. And so while the pieces are there, the single thing that it lacks, at least from my perspective, is a mechanism for accountability. And I think that's probably the most difficult thing for the city. And I understand that. So, the city feels it's already being held accountable because, it's got this planning commission. It's got, elected officials that represent the people. By the way, this is a common theme that we hear from the various bodies, elected bodies, is, the people elected us to speak for them, not you. We have that responsibility. And I'm not saying that's what you're saying. I'm just saying that it sort of implies that in the conversation.
No, understood, Kevin.
Yeah. So I don't want to come off as somehow insulting or anything. It's not meant to be that way at all. You know me, Greg. Anyway.
No, we are long time friends.
Long time history, brother.
I appreciate where you're
literally from the streets forward.
Right.
So anyway, and I think that's the piece that somehow needs to be built into this. So if you know, there's a request, at least, I would call a demand from the CSC, but I'm not going to go that far. But at least an expectation that there will be this prompt communication that takes place as soon as one of these projects, you know, sort of hits the desk at the city, so that the community is informed, you know, as immediately as possible, this is going to happen in their neighborhood, or at least that someone is proposing to do this in their neighborhood, because you know, the proposal is a long way from it actually happening. But giving the community, right now, the community is more stuck in a very reactive position, which, by the way, most of the citizens of Fresno are, where an EIR drops, or there's the mandatory publication in the local newspaper of this intent to do whatever that, you know, nobody ever reads, and but meets the standard. And so, you know, how do we move away from that into a more active communication there, where the CSC and its members kind of become communication vehicles for the city about these proposed projects, and so can react earlier, or at least prepare earlier to react. And I think at that point, the reaction is going to be a little less intense, and maybe a little bit more questioning, if you will, because quite often at that phase, maybe nothing's happening, but because it's coming from other directions, other sources, other than an official one, like the city, where, like, when you say it, we know, you know, there's really something that's been submitted or that's in process. And the way we often hear about it is through, who knows, somebody tells somebody, and then, you know, people react, and the next thing you know, we're fighting with LTEs and op-eds in the newspaper. So, you know, how do we get in front of that? You know, I think this is a possible vehicle to do that. So how would you see, Greg, how would you see, you know, that kind of accountability, at least, you know, an agency or within the city, a person, somebody who's, you know, accountable for, and the relationship is built with, so, you know, the CSC can feel, you know, this is the person who's going to make sure that we get this, that this happens.
Yeah, you know, with the letter being signed by the city manager, who oversees, you know, all of the employees here at the city, I thought that was strong enough with that. But, you know, I hear what you all are saying. And so here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to share our conversation with the manager, and you know, let's kind of huddle up around that.
Why don't you invite him to one of our meetings? So it's not you, you know, like we can convey the message directly if you want us to do that.
Well, it's a she.
I was going to say, I think it's a she, isn't it?
I lost track that the former one went away. Sorry.
Yes, yeah, no problem, no problem. I just want to make sure that for all my sisters on the line, I'm respectful that I work for, you know, a female leader. So yes, that I will mention that to her also.
See, Stella has her hand up.
Sí, buenos días a todos. Yo quería comentar algo sobre la carta. Yo, para mí, no se me hace una opción de eso de la carta, no me parece a mí, porque muchas veces pues no sabemos si esa carta se va a leer o cómo va a estar eso. Yo, para mí, prefiero un memorando de entendimiento, para que así pues tomen en cuenta, ¿no?, lo que estamos pidiendo. Para mí la carta no. Gracias.
The interpreter can read the comment of Isabel in English. So everybody understands?
It got interpreted.
Yeah, it was interpreted in real time.
Yeah, they did a great job.
You mean, that was a comment. I was saying there's a chat message and I don't know if that's
Oh,
being
sorry.
translated.
I can go ahead and read the chat, and Amelia, if you can interpret it. So, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I hear your request. I mean, Amelia, in a moment, would you mind reading Isabel's comment in the chat, please?
Kevin, did you have another question?
I did. Well, it's more of a comment. So, and I think some things, one of the things that was said earlier that, that Greg said early on, and I think it was dead on, is he looked everywhere. You looked everywhere, Greg. Sorry, I shouldn't talk about you in the third person when you're sitting there. That you looked everywhere and couldn't find anything, you know, that you could build this on, if you will, you know, any type of document or agreement. And I assume you did your due diligence. I haven't looked for it. That'd be a tough thing to find in the first place, just trying to figure out the search parameters. But one of the things that 617 has brought forward that has been, I think, really exciting and one of its best features is our ability to do really new and interesting things. And so, you know, the way that you're approaching it now is the way most cities, I think, would approach this. This is kind of the old way. This is, you know, the standard way. So here we have this opportunity to kind of chart new ground, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, we've found in a number of the projects we're working on related to AB 617 in communities with local let's call them polluters, the local employers that have these big businesses that have permits, and local community leaders, schools, that they had never done a lot of the things that we're working with them on either, you know. And at first they were, you know, a conservative group, right? You know, not, this is kind of the as is, this is safe, we know this plays out. But I think, and I'm happy to share a few examples of where they've taken that chance. School districts, for instance, the most conservative people you'll ever find, you know, have, once the first one asked us to put a new air monitor at their school, and took that risk of knowing, you know, that the parents were going to know, and that's on a public website, you know, sjvair.com, and parents are now going to know what the air pollution is at that school, and, you know, and they're going to be accountable for it. So they took a real risk there, you know, that you know, if they held a day where kids were in school and that monitor that they've got at their school was high, you know, parents could be angry because their policies maybe weren't keeping up with the reality as quickly as they should. But they took that risk, you know, and now a year and a half later, they love it. And now they have more of them in the community. And in fact, we've got 3 more schools lined up that want to do the same thing. So, I mean, I think that's just one example, you know, and I think that, you know, this is another opportunity. It may take a little longer, but, you know, maybe we do craft some kind of a more, you know, MOUs are nice because, let's face it, I mean, there's an out clause in every one of them, you know, termination clause that after 30 days, if somebody's not happy, you know, you can bail, right? I mean, it's not a contract, it's not a BAA, you know, it's not a master services agreement or something like that. That's why we have MOUs. So, you know, but it is a little tighter, let's put it that way. And it does lay out, you know, what we'll do and what you'll, and it forces accountability on both sides. So if the CSC wants an MOU, it has to be willing to do some things as well, right? So it does give the other side a chance to structure the relationship. You get it? You know, from your side, this is what the city needs to see the CSC do if we're going to have this kind of a relationship or put forward. And, you know, the same goes in reverse, and then the negotiation happens. So just a thought that working toward it is not a bad thing. Whether we get there or not is a different question. But, you know, committing to sort of work toward it at least starts to chart that new path. And who knows? I mean, if we come out with something good on the other end, yeah, it's kind of a win for everybody. If we don't, we're no worse off than we are now. So, you know, we've got the letter in the meantime, but I think committing to work forward on that is not a bad thing. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Appreciate that, Kevin, in your comments.
Yeah, I will just jump in and say my last departing words. I have a meeting that was started at 11:30, so I'm 5 minutes late. But thank you for all your effort, Greg. I really appreciate it. And, you know, we look forward to continue this discussion with the city administrator, if you know, so that we can explain why are we suggesting this MOU instead of the letter. And, you know, let us know how we can help to make this discussion go forward. Thank you again for your work on this.
Thanks, everybody. And I too have another one. So I guess we'll see each other next week or the week after for our regular CSC meeting.
Thanks, Greg.
All right. Thank you all. You guys take care now.
Gracias.